Hello, this is Sondra Oster, Baras, bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. Well, today we begin the Torah from the beginning. We start with Genesis 1, and we begin the Torah portion cycle that will take us for an entire year until once again next year, at the end of the Feast of Tabernacles, we complete the cycle. And it's always really such a thrill. Shabbat Bereisheet, the Shabbat of the first chapters of Genesis, is always a thrill. It always feels like a new beginning. Of course, we are just finishing weeks of holidays, so it's nice to get back to routine, a little bit quiet, not having lots of family and friends always in and out of the house. It is definitely a quieter time, getting back to normal, going back to work. But that first Shabbat is always just a nice, refreshing start. We're back in the synagogue, but unlike during the holidays, we're not going to be there all the time for all these long davenings, long prayers and festivities and whatever. It's back to routine. Of course, Genesis begins with the beginning. It begins with the beginning of creation. It introduces us to God. And in this earlier chapters, of course, God is not yet the God of Israel. He is the God of creation. He is the God who he's a universal God. He's a God that the entire universe should be honoring and believing in, because he is the God who has created everyone and has created the world. And so we have in this first chapter, of course, it's well known, all the various things, all the different days. There are 6 days of creation, and on every day something else is created. And then we have, at the beginning of chapter 2, actually, these next few verses, the beginning of chapter 2, Jewish tradition would not have put it at the beginning of chapter 2, but it would have seen it as more correctly belonging to the end of chapter 1. Because the seventh day, while it is not a day of creation, it is a day that clearly culminates the 6 days of creation. And basically, what does it say? God finished creating the world, the heavens, the earth, and everything within it. God finished on the seventh day, okay? The creation that he had done, the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all that he had done. God blessed the seventh day, sanctified it, because on that day he rested from all his labors, all his creations, which God had created to do. Okay, now I'm giving you a very rough translation from the Hebrew. I know your translations are probably smoother, but I wanted to just use this translation from Hebrew because there are a few words here that I want to point out. So first of all, in verse 2, it says God finished his work on the seventh day, and it said he rested on the seventh day. Now, which is it? Did he finish on the seventh day, or did he rest on the seventh day? And a very classic understanding of this is something that enables us to understand the uniqueness of God. Because God can actually finish and begin something to the millisecond. Okay? So basically, God finished his work just as the seventh day was beginning. In other words, at that millisecond or nanosecond or whatever it is that marks the end of the 6th day and the beginning of the 7th day, it is at that moment, at that instant in time, that God actually finishes his work so that on the 7th day he could rest. Okay? Now, the other thing is the very end of these 3 verses, it says, because on that day God rested from all that he had created to do. In Hebrew, the word is lasot. What does that mean, to do? He created from everything he did. So why do we have that extra word, to do? And this, I think, it says a great deal about what creation is really all about. Because God created a world, but he also created man to take his place within that world. And he left man jobs. And that's the to do. He created a world and then put man into it, and it is for man to continue that creation. Now, of course, the difference between man and God is God creates from nothing. Man can only take what has been created and develop it further. But that is man's role. Man's role is to develop and to understand. So if we talk about science and medicine and technology and philosophy and all these other things that human beings have been involved with ever since creation, This is man's role, to take the world as God has created, to discover its secrets, and using that knowledge to move things forward, to create new medicines, to create new technologies. And this is the role that God has left us with these words, la'asot, to do. And one more thing I wanted to point out is here we meet the Sabbath for the first time. Now, in the Ten Commandments, we have a commandment to the nation of Israel to keep and honor the Sabbath. And there's very specific rules there. You're not supposed to work. You're supposed to rest. You're supposed to let your servants rest. You're supposed to let your animals rest. It is a day of rest with very specific commandments of what you can and cannot do on that day. And of course, Jewish tradition has fleshed that out with customs and commandments that come to us all the way from the time of Moses. How do we honor that day? There are of course, we have already in the Bible separate sacrifices in the temple that would have been brought on that day. And today we make the kiddush. We have a special ceremony to actually declare the sanctity of that day. And we declare that over wine. And then we have meals and we have enjoyment. And all of that is just a fulfillment of what is written in the Ten Commandments, to honor the Sabbath and keep the Sabbath. Here in Genesis, it doesn't say anything about what we're supposed to do with that Sabbath day. There's no commandment to honor it. This then is the universal Sabbath. The commandments with regard to Sabbath are given to Israel. But there is such a thing as a universal Sabbath, and this is what God has declared here. As a fact, God rested on the seventh day, and therefore he sanctified that day. And therefore, really, there is a place for all of humanity to find a way to mark that Sabbath. How they do it, what they do, well, there's a lot of freedom there. The nations of the world have not been commanded with specific rules and laws. However, there is a fact that is stated here, that God set aside this day. It is a day that is holier. And of course, every single human being can enjoy that day and find spiritual sustenance in that day, because it is a day that God did set apart all the way at the beginning, from the first week of the existence of this earth. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below, as well as on the notification bell, and that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.